The morning sun shone through the large windows of the Seoul Interstellar Research Center. Dr. Ta checked his watch for the fifth time in 10 minutes. Today was important. After months of planning, the first Naveri visitor would arrive to test their new neural connector. "Relax, Ta. Your pacing is making me nervous," said Neri. She sat at her workstation, running final checks on the neural interface equipment. "I can't help it," Ta replied. "This is the biggest project of my career." He ran his hand through his short black hair. At 35, Ta was young to lead such an important research team, but his work on neural mapping had made him the perfect choice. Neri smiled. "The equipment is ready. We've tested it 100 times. It will work." The door slid open with a soft hiss. Dr. Kim walked in, his face serious as always. Behind him came someone that made both researchers stand straight. The Naveri were not like humans. They stood taller, with 4 long arms and skin that seemed to glow with a soft blue light. You could almost see through parts of their bodies, like looking at the ocean on a sunny day. But it was their eyes that always surprised humans the most: large, deep, and filled with a wisdom that made you feel small. "Dr. Ta, Ms. Nuri, may I introduce Lena of the Naveri Science Academy?" Dr. Kim said formally. Lena stepped forward. She moved with a grace that made her seem to float rather than walk. Her forearms were held in the traditional Naveri greeting position, 2 crossed over her chest and 2 extended outward. "It is an honor to meet you both," Lena said. Her voice had a musical quality, the translator at her throat converting her natural sounds into perfect Korean. "Your research on neural connections is quite impressive, especially for—" She paused, seeming to search for the right words. "A younger species." Ta bowed slightly. "The honor is ours. We've learned so much from Naveri technology already." 30 years ago, humans had discovered they weren't alone in the universe. The Naveri had arrived in massive ships that dwarfed anything humans had built. They came peacefully, with technology centuries ahead of Earth's. But for all their advances, the Naveri were curious about humans. They found Earth culture fascinating, especially human emotions and sensations. Dr. Kim cleared his throat. "I'll leave you to explain the project, Dr. Ta. The director wants a full report by evening." With that, he left the 3 of them alone in the lab. "Would you like to see our setup?" Neri asked, gesturing toward the equipment. "Yes, please," Lena said, following Neri to the main console. Her movements were smooth, almost like she was gliding rather than walking. Todd joined them, pulling up the project schematics on the main screen. As you know, Naveri and human nervous systems are very different. Your species processes sensory input through a distributed network, while ours is centralized in our spine and brain. Lena nodded. "Yes, it's one reason we find humans so interesting. Your centralized system creates unique experiences we don't have." "Like tickling," Neri said with a small smile. "Exactly." Lena's eyes brightened. "In all our studies of Earth species, the concept of tickling stands out as something with no Naveri equivalent. A gentle touch that creates involuntary laughter and movement. Fascinating." Todd pulled up more detailed images. "That's why we developed this neural connector. It creates a bridge between our nervous systems. In theory, it will allow you to experience human sensations directly, not just read data about them." Lena moved closer to the screen, all 4 of her arms making small gestures of excitement. "And you believe it can translate something as complex as tickling?" "We think so," Neri said. "We successfully mapped the neural patterns associated with various sensations. Tickling has a very distinct signature." "Would you like to see the connector itself?" Tai asked. Lena nodded eagerly. They walked to the far side of the lab where a clear chamber stood. Inside were two padded platforms, one designed for human proportions, the other modified for Niveri anatomy. Between them, a complex web of wires and sensors connected to a central unit that hummed softly. "It's smaller than I imagined," Lena said, examining the device with all four eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of deep interest among the Niveri. "Most of the technology is in the software," Neri explained. "The physical connectors are just the interface." Todd opened a panel to show the inner workings. "We adapted elements of Niveri neural scanning technology and combined them with human brain-computer interfaces. The result is something new, a true collaboration between our species." Lena was quiet for a moment, studying the device. "And you're sure it's safe?" Ta hesitated. "We've run thousands of simulations and several human-to-human tests. But cross-species neural connection has never been attempted before. There are always risks with something so new." "What kind of risks?" Lena asked, her voice calm but serious. "Neural overload is the main concern," Neri said. "Your brain might process the sensations differently than we expect. Best case, you feel nothing. Worst case, you might experience discomfort or sensory confusion. But nothing permanent," Tai added quickly. "The system has multiple safety protocols. At the first sign of problems, it shuts down automatically." Lena considered this information. The Niveri were known for their careful, methodical approach to new experiences. They rarely rushed into anything without thorough analysis. "I would like to proceed," she said finally. "The potential knowledge gain outweighs the calculated risk." Ta and Neri exchanged surprised looks. "Are you sure?" Tai asked. "We can run more simulations if you want more time to consider." Lena made a gesture with her upper right arm, the Niveri equivalent of a smile. "I've studied human culture for 6 years. I've analyzed over 5,000 hours of human interaction. I've read every paper on human neurology your species has produced." Her eyes fixed on Ta. "But I've never felt what it's like to be human. This is why I came to Earth." Her certainty was impressive. Ta nodded. "All right. We'll begin preparations for the first test tomorrow morning." "Why not today?" Lena asked. "I'm fully prepared now." Neri laughed softly. "Typical Niveri efficiency. But we humans need to follow protocols. The ethics committee needs to approve the final participant forms, and we need to calibrate the system specifically for your neural patterns." "I see." Lena seemed disappointed but understanding. Human procedures do involve many steps. "It's one of our peculiarities," Ta said with a smile. "We'll use today to show you around the facility and explain the process in detail. Tomorrow, if all goes well, you'll experience your first human sensation." "And if the first test is successful, how soon could we attempt the tickling experiment?" Lena asked, her voice revealing her eagerness despite the translator's neutral tones. 3 days, maybe 4, Ta said. "We need to establish baseline connections first, starting with simple sensations like temperature and pressure." Lena nodded, all 4 arms making small gestures of acceptance. "I understand. Proper scientific method requires careful progression." As they walked back toward the main lab area, Ta couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Tomorrow they would attempt something never done before, create a bridge between human and alien consciousness. And soon after, they would share one of humanity's strangest and most unique experiences with a being from another world. What would Lena feel when she experienced tickling for the first time? How would her alien mind interpret this sensation that made humans both laugh and squirm? The answers to these questions might open new doors of understanding between their species. For now, though, there were forms to complete, systems to calibrate, and a very curious alien to prepare for an experience unlike any in her world. The next morning, the neural interface lab buzzed with activity. Jun, a young lab technician, moved quickly between machines, checking readings and adjusting settings. Dr. Park from the ethics committee sat in the corner, watching everything with careful eyes. Dr. Ta hadn't slept much. The thought of today's experiment kept him awake most of the night. This wasn't just about science anymore. It was about bringing two very different species closer together. "Everything is ready," Neri said, looking up from her console. She had been at the lab since dawn, running final checks on the neural connector. The door opened and Lena walked in. Today she wore the standard Neveri science uniform, a shimmering blue outfit that seemed to move with her body. All four of her arms were bare to allow for the connection points. "Good morning," she said, her translator making her musical sounds into clear words. "I am ready to proceed." Dr. Park stood up and walked over. "Before we begin, I need to confirm once more that you understand all the risks involved in this experiment." Lena made a gesture with her lower left arm that the humans had learned meant patience. "I have reviewed all documents and understand the theoretical risks. Neural overload, sensory confusion, possible temporary discomfort. I accept these possibilities." Dr. Park nodded, but her face still showed concern. "Very well. Please sign here." She held out a tablet. Lena used her upper right arm to press her hand against the screen, leaving a glowing mark, the Niveri version of a signature. "Thank you," Dr. Park said. "You may proceed, Dr. Ta." Ta led Lena to the neural chamber. Inside were the two platforms they had shown her yesterday. "The procedure is simple. You'll lie here." He pointed to the larger platform designed for Neveri anatomy, "and I'll lie there. The neural connector will create a bridge between our nervous systems. And you will be experiencing these sensations with me?" Lena asked. "Yes," Ta nodded. "I'll be the source. Whatever I feel, the connector will translate and send to you. We'll start with simple sensations, temperature, pressure, texture, before attempting anything complex like tickling." Jun approached with a tray of small round sensors. "These go on your arms," he explained to Lena. "They'll help us monitor your neural responses." Lena extended all four arms, allowing Jun to place the sensors at specific points. "Your species has made impressive advances in neural technology," she said. "When our ships first arrived, your computers were primitive by comparison." Neri smiled as she worked at the main console. "We learned quickly. Plus, we had good teachers." Once the sensors were in place, Lena lay down on her platform. Her forearms rested in special grooves designed to keep them stable during the experiment. "Comfortable?" Tai asked. "Yes," Lena replied. Her large eyes blinked in sequence, top to bottom, left to right, a sign of anticipation in Neveri body language. "Good." Tom moved to his own platform and lay down. Jun attached similar sensors to his arms and head. "Connection preparations complete," Neri announced from the control station. "Neural mapping is at 98% accuracy. That's even better than our simulations predicted." "Before we begin," Dr. Park said, "I'd like to review the safety protocols one more time." Jun nodded. At the first sign of neural distress, the system automatically disconnects. Additionally, both participants have manual override buttons. He pointed to the small red buttons near the hands of both Ta and Lena, and the maximum connection strength. Dr. Park asked. "We're starting at 10% and will increase gradually," Neri explained. "We won't go above 50% during this first session no matter what." Dr. Park made a note on her tablet. "Very well. You may begin." Neri looked at both participants. Ready? Ta gave a thumbs up. Lena made the Naveri gesture for agreement with her upper right arm. Initiating neural connection at 10% strength, Neri said, her fingers moving across the console. In 3, 2, 1, connection active. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Ta gasped softly. What is it? Dr. Park asked, concerned. It's strange, Ta said slowly. I can feel a sort of echo. Like my own sensations are coming back to me, but different somehow. That's the feedback loop, Neri explained. You're feeling a shadow of how Lena's brain is processing your sensations. Everyone turned to look at Lena. The Naveri lay perfectly still, her eyes wide open, all four blinking rapidly, a sign of intense focus. Lena, Ta asked, are you okay? For several seconds, she didn't respond. Then slowly, she turned her head toward him. Her translator struggled to find the right words. Unexpected. I feel boundaries. Limitations I never knew existed. Jun looked confused. What does she mean? Neri's eyes widened with understanding. The centralized nervous system. Naveri neural networks are distributed throughout their bodies. She's experiencing what it's like to have all sensations filtered through a single pathway, our spinal cord and brain. Is it uncomfortable? Dr. Park asked, ready to end the experiment if necessary. No, Lena said. Different, focused, intense. Her upper arms made small movements, the Naveri equivalent of wonder. Your species experiences the world through such a narrow channel, yet so deeply. Ta smiled. That's a fascinating observation. Ready to try some basic sensory input? Yes, Lena replied. Joan approached with a small device. We'll start with temperature, he explained, holding the device near Ta's arm. He pressed a button, and a small circle of cool air blew against Ta's skin. Cold, Ta said simply, so Lena would know what she was feeling. Lena's four eyes blinked in rapid succession. Yes, cold, but different than very cold. More immediate. Next, Jun brought a small weight and placed it on Ta's palm. Pressure, Ta explained. I feel it, Lena said. The weight is focused. For us, pressure is sensed across a wider area. They continued with several more basic sensations, different textures, mild temperature changes, light and sound. Each time, Lena described how differently her species experienced these sensations compared to humans. Neural pathways are stabilizing, Neri reported after 30 minutes. I think we can try increasing the connection strength to 20%. Dr. Park checked the readings on her tablet. Lena's neural activity is within safe parameters. You may proceed. Increasing to 20% in 3, 2, 1, Neri adjusted the controls. This time, both Ta and Lena reacted immediately. Tae's eyes widened, and Lena's forearms twitched slightly. That's much stronger, Ta said. Yes, Lena agreed. Her translator couldn't capture the musical quality that had entered her voice, but the humans in the room could hear it in her natural sounds. The connection is more complete now. Jun looked at the readings on his screen. This is amazing. Her neural patterns are starting to mirror human responses, but with a distinct Naveri signature. Let's try something more complex, Ta suggested. Jun, the texture panel, please. Jun brought over a panel with different materials mounted on it. He ran Ta's fingers across soft fabric, rough sandpaper, and cool metal. Lena's reactions were immediate and intense. Her arms moved in patterns the humans had never seen before, complex gestures that her species used to express deep sensory experiences. Your sense of touch, she said slowly, it's so concentrated. so precise. We feel broadly, across our bodies. You feel, specifically, intensely, at exact points. The experiment continued for another hour, with each new sensation bringing new insights into the differences between human and Naivari perception. Finally, Neri looked up from her console. I think that's enough for today. The neural pathways are starting to show fatigue. Dr. Park nodded in agreement. End the session. Disconnecting neural bridge, Neri announced. 3, 2, 1. The connection broke. Both Ty and Lena lay still for a moment, adjusting to this sudden separation. Jun helped remove the sensors from Ty first, then moved to help Lena. How do you feel? He asked her. Lena sat up slowly, all four arms making small adjustments to help her balance. Changed, she said simply. Her large eyes focused on Ta. Your species experiences the world so differently than mine, so intensely focused. Ta sat up as well, and your experience is more distributed, more holistic. Yes, Lena's upper right arm made the gesture for agreement. Neither better nor worse, just different. Dr. Park made some final notes on her tablet. Today's session was very successful. If all remains well, we can proceed to the next phase tomorrow. Lena turned all four eyes toward her. The tickling experiment? Not quite yet, Ta explained. We need one more session with complex sensations before we try something as unique as tickling. But soon. Lena's arms made a gesture of acceptance. I understand. Proper scientific method. As the team began shutting down the equipment, Lena remained seated on her platform, her eyes distant in thought. What are you thinking about? Neri asked her. If simple sensations are so different between our species, Lena replied, I wonder how different tickling will be. Your data suggests it creates an involuntary response, something between pleasure and discomfort that triggers laughter. Neri smiled. It's hard to explain. You'll just have to experience it. Yes, Lena agreed, all four eyes blinking with anticipation. Tomorrow, 2 days had passed since the first neural connection. The team had run 3 more sessions, each time increasing the connection strength and complexity of sensations. Lena had experienced everything from the taste of sweet honey to the feeling of a gentle breeze against skin. Each time, her reactions had provided valuable data on how differently Niveri processed sensations compared to humans. Today was different. Today they would attempt the tickling experiment. The neural lab was more crowded than usual. Min, a psychology researcher, had joined the team to document behavioral responses. Dr. Kim had also returned, wanting to witness this milestone personally. All systems are at optimal levels, Nuri announced from her station. Neural connection is stable at 40% strength. Ta and Lena were already in position on their platforms, sensors attached and calibrated. After so many sessions, the process had become routine for both of them. Before we begin, Min said, adjusting the camera focused on Lena, could you explain once more why tickling doesn't exist for Navari? Lena's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, her way of organizing thoughts before speaking. Navari evolved with distributed neural networks. Our nerve endings still cluster in specific areas like humans. The combination of light touch and specific nerve clusters is what creates your tickling sensation. We have nothing similar. And have you ever seen humans being tickled? Min asked. Only in videos, Lena replied. The reaction is fascinating. Involuntary laughter and movement, a mix of pleasure and discomfort. Nothing in Niveri experience matches this contradiction. Dr. Park checked her tablet once more. All safety protocols are active. Remember, at the first sign of neural distress, we disconnect immediately. "We're ready to proceed," Ta said from his platform. He looked over at Lena. "Are you sure you want to continue? This will be unlike anything you've experienced before." All four of Lena's arms made the Naveri gesture for determination. "Absolutely. This is why I volunteered for this project." "Very well," Neri said. "Jun, proceed with phase 1. Jun approached Ta with a small tool that looked like a soft brush. "We'll start with light touch, not full tickling," he explained to everyone. "This will help establish the baseline." He gently ran the brush along Ta's forearm. Ta smiled but showed no other reaction. "Just feels like a soft touch," he reported. On her platform, Lena's eyes widened slightly. "I feel it. The sensation is gentle, pleasant." "Good," Jun said. "Now we'll move to a more sensitive area." This time, he ran the brush along the inside of Ta's wrist. Tay's smile grew, and his arm twitched slightly. "That's starting to tickle a little," he said. Lena's reaction was immediate and surprising. All four of her arms jerked slightly, and her eyes blinked rapidly in an uneven pattern. "What was that?" she asked, her translator struggling to convey the mixture of surprise and confusion in her natural voice. Min leaned forward, watching her closely. "What did you feel?" "A jolt. Like an energy surge, but not unpleasant. It made me want to move my arms, but I didn't choose to move them." Dr. Kim nodded with interest. The involuntary response. "That's the key element of tickling, the loss of control." "Should we continue?" Neri asked, checking the neural readings. "Yes," Lena said quickly. "I want to understand this better." Jun moved the brush to Ta's palm, using slightly more pressure. This time, Ta laughed and tried to pull his hand away. "Definitely ticklish," he said through his laughter. The effect on Lena was dramatic. All four arms flailed in different directions, and a series of musical sounds came from her throat. Sounds her translator couldn't process. "Lena," Dr. Park asked with concern, "are you in distress?" It took a moment for Lena to regain enough control to speak. "Not distress. It's overwhelming. My body is responding without my command. I don't have a word for it." "That's laughter," Min said, watching her closely. "Or the Niveri equivalent. Your species doesn't laugh, do you?" "We have expressions of joy, of course," Lena replied, her arms still making small involuntary movements. "But nothing that takes control of our bodies this way." Neri studied the readings on her console. Her neural activity is elevated but within safe parameters. The patterns are unlike anything we've seen in previous sessions. "Should we stop?" Jun asked. "No," Lena said firmly. "Continue. I want to experience the full sensation." Dr. Kim looked at Dr. Park, who nodded her approval. "Proceed to the next level," he instructed. Jun put down the brush and approached Ta. "The most effective tickling is usually done with fingers," he explained. "And the most sensitive areas in humans tend to be the ribs, neck, feet, and under the arms." He wiggled his fingers lightly against Ta's ribs. The effect was immediate. Ta burst into laughter, his body twisting to get away from the sensation. "Stop," he gasped between laughs. "That's enough." But the neural connection had already transferred the sensation. On her platform, Lena's reaction was unlike anything the humans had ever seen from a Niveri. All four arms thrashed wildly. Her body arched and twisted. From her throat came a cascade of musical sounds, rising and falling tones that had no translation. "Disconnect them," Dr. Park ordered, alarmed by the intensity of Lena's response. "Wait," Min called out. "Look at her eyes." Despite the chaos of her bodily movements, Lena's four eyes were blinking in the pattern the humans had learned meant joy or excitement. She wasn't in distress. She was experiencing something entirely new. Neural patterns are stable, Neri reported, though her voice showed her surprise. Unusual, but not dangerous. After a few more seconds, Jun stopped tickling Ta. Slowly, both Ta and Lena calmed down. Ta was breathing heavily, still smiling from the experience. Lena lay completely still, all four arms limp at her sides. "Lena," Ta asked with concern, "are you okay?" For a long moment, she didn't respond. Then slowly, her upper right arm made the Niveri gesture for wonder. "I had no control," she said finally, her translator working again. "My body acted on its own. It was freedom." Min looked confused. Freedom? Most humans find lack of control frightening. "Niveri always have control," Lena explained. "Our evolutionary path valued constant physical discipline. To feel my body respond without my command, it was like discovering a new color, a new sense I never knew existed." Dr. Kim exchanged glances with Ta. "This is unexpected. We thought you might find tickling pleasant or unpleasant, but not liberating." The sensation itself was strange, both comfortable and uncomfortable at once, Lena continued. But the loss of control was the true revelation. In Niveri culture, we never experience such release. Min made notes rapidly on his tablet. This could have profound implications for our understanding of Niveri psychology. "Would you like to try once more?" Tai asked. "A different ticklish spot, perhaps." "Yes," Lena said without hesitation. All four of her arms made eager gestures. Jun looked to Dr. Park for permission. She checked the readings once more and nodded. "Proceed, but be ready to disconnect at my signal." This time, Jun lightly tickled the bottom of Ta's foot, one of the most ticklish areas for most humans. Ta's reaction was even stronger than before, his laughter louder and his movements more desperate. The response traveled through the neural connection to Lena. Once again, her body responded with chaotic movements and musical sounds. But this time, there was something different, a pattern to the sounds, a rhythm that seemed almost like. "She's laughing," Min said in amazement. "She's actually laughing in her own way." The sounds coming from Lena did indeed resemble laughter, rising and falling tones that matched the rhythm of her movements. It was alien yet instantly recognizable to every human in the room. When Jun finally stopped, everyone in the lab was silent, watching in wonder as both participants recovered from the experience. "Neural connection stable at 40%, Neri reported quietly. No signs of distress from either subject." Lena's four eyes focused on Ta. "Thank you," she said simply. "Your species has given mine a gift today. A new experience. A new freedom." Dr. Kim stepped forward. "I think that's enough for today. You've both done remarkable work." As Jun began removing the sensors from Ta, Min approached Lena. "How would you describe the experience to other Niveri?" he asked. Lena's arms moved in a complex pattern the humans had never seen before. "I cannot describe it. It must be experienced. It is like," she paused, searching for words the translator could handle, "like learning your body can sing when you never knew music existed." Min nodded, making more notes. The first Niveri laugh, a historic moment. As the team began shutting down the equipment, Lena remained on her platform, all four eyes blinking in the pattern of deep thought. Something fundamental had changed in her understanding of what it meant to be alive, to have a body, to feel. And tomorrow, she would have to find a way to explain this revelation to her people. 1 week had passed since the tickling experiment. The research center buzzed with excitement. Today, Lena would present the findings to a joint human-Niveri scientific committee. Word had spread quickly about the breakthrough, and now everyone wanted to know more. The large conference room was filled to capacity. Humans sat on one side, Niveri on the other. At the front of the room stood a podium with screens behind it. Ambassador Hannah, a respected human diplomat who had worked with the Niveri for 20 years, sat in the front row next to Dr. Kim. Ta fidgeted nervously in his seat. Neri reached over and squeezed his hand. "Relax," she whispered. "This is a good day." The door opened, and Lena entered. She moved with the usual Niveri grace, but there was something different about her today. Her skin seemed to glow more brightly, and all 4 of her arms moved with extra energy. Dr. Kim stood and approached the podium. "Welcome, honored guests. Today we present the results of the Neural Connector Project, a joint human-Niveri initiative. I am pleased to introduce Lena of the Niveri Science Academy, who will share her experiences." He stepped aside, and Lena took his place at the podium. Her 4 eyes scanned the room, taking in the mix of human and Niveri faces. "Esteemed colleagues," she began, her translator converting her musical sounds into clear words. "1 week ago, I experienced something no Niveri has ever known. Through the neural connector, I felt what humans call tickling." The Niveri in the audience leaned forward slightly, their way of showing increased interest. "For those unfamiliar with this sensation," Lena continued, "tickling is a light touch that triggers involuntary laughter and movement in humans. It serves no clear survival purpose. It is simply a quirk of human neurology, a happy accident of evolution." She activated the screen behind her, showing brain scans from the experiment. "As you can see, human brains respond to tickling with activity in both the somatosensory cortex and the anterior cingulate cortex. This creates the unique mix of physical sensation and emotional response." Ambassador Hannah nodded with interest. She had helped establish the first cultural exchanges between humans and Niveri years ago. "What the data cannot show," Lena said, her voice becoming more musical even through the translator, "is what this experience means. For a Niveri to feel tickling is not simply to add a new sensation. It is to discover a new way of being." She paused, all 4 eyes blinking in sequence, gathering her thoughts. Niveri evolution favored control. Our distributed neural network allows us precise command over every movement. We never experience the involuntary reactions that humans take for granted: the startled jump, the reflexive laugh, the uncontrolled smile. The humans in the room exchanged glances. They had never considered how different Niveri emotional expression must be. "Through the neural connector," Lena continued, "I experienced what it feels like to lose control, to have my body respond without my permission. It was liberating." She showed a video clip from the experiment, her 4 arms flailing as the tickling sensation traveled through the neural connection. The musical sounds of her laughter filled the room. The Niveri in the audience made small gestures of surprise. They had never seen one of their kind react this way. The human smiled, recognizing the universal nature of laughter, even in its alien form. The sensation itself was interesting, both pleasant and unpleasant at once. But the loss of control was the true revelation. In that moment, I understood something fundamental about being human. You live constantly on the edge of control and chaos. Your bodies surprise you. Your emotions overwhelm you. And in this surrender, you find joy. Ta felt a lump in his throat. He had never thought of human experience this way, as a beautiful balance between control and surrender. The Niveri Science Council initially considered humans physiologically primitive, Lena said, looking directly at the Niveri delegation. "We saw your centralized nervous system as a limitation. But now I understand it is also a gift. It allows for experiences my people have never known." She changed the display to show a comparison of human and Niveri neural patterns during laughter. Based on these findings, I propose a new field of study: comparative sensory experiences. We have much to learn from each other's different evolutionary paths. Ambassador Hannah stood up. The Human-Niveri Cultural Exchange Program fully supports this proposal. What other experiences might we share through this technology? Lena's upper right arm made the gesture for possibility, a flowing movement that humans had learned meant optimism about the future. Many, Ambassador. Humans experience sensations we cannot: tickling, crying, shivering in fear or excitement. And we Niveri have sensory experiences humans lack: our ability to perceive quantum fluctuations, for example. Dr. Kim stepped forward again. Thank you, Lena. This presentation will be made available to all research institutions on both worlds. Now, in celebration of this breakthrough, we have prepared a small gathering in the adjacent hall. As the formal presentation ended, the attendees moved to the celebration area. Humans and Niveri mingled together, discussing the implications of the research. Ta and Neri found themselves surrounded by curious Niveri scientists, all eager to hear more about human sensory experiences. Is it true that humans cry when they feel strong emotions? One Niveri researcher asked Neri. Yes, she replied, both sad and happy tears. It's another involuntary response, our bodies releasing emotion physically. Fascinating, the Niveri said, all four eyes blinking rapidly. Perhaps that could be our next experiment. Across the room, Lena approached Ta with Ambassador Hannah. Dr. Ta, the ambassador said, your team's work has opened new doors for understanding between our species. The Niveri High Council is very impressed. Ta smiled modestly. It was a true collaboration. We couldn't have done it without Lena's bravery. Lena's forearms made a gesture of connection, reaching out toward both humans. I have learned something important since our experiment, she said. What's that? Ta asked. That sometimes the most valuable discoveries come not from studying what makes us similar, but from exploring what makes us different. Ambassador Hannah nodded. Wisdom that applies beyond science, I think. A comfortable silence fell between them as they watched humans and Niveri talking animatedly around the room. 30 years ago, these species hadn't known of each other's existence. Now they were sharing experiences at the deepest neurological level. Suddenly, Lena's upper right arm moved toward Ta. Her long, slender fingers wiggled slightly. May I? She asked. Ta looked confused for a moment, then understood. He laughed and nodded. With gentle precision, Lena reached out and tickled Ta's side. He burst into laughter, trying to step away. Nearby humans turned to watch, smiling at the scene. Now I understand the technique as well as the sensation, Lena said, her translator somehow capturing the playful tone in her musical voice. Neri walked over, grinning at Ta's laughter. What's happening here? Before anyone could answer, Lena used her other arms to tickle Neri as well. Soon both humans were laughing, trying to escape the gentle but persistent tickling from Lena's forearms. It seems our Niveri friend has mastered a very human skill, Ambassador Hannah observed with a smile. Around the room, other Niveri watched with fascination. Some made notes on their devices. Others moved closer, curious about this strange human behavior. Finally, Lena stopped, allowing Ta and Neri to catch their breath. All four of her eyes blinked in the pattern that meant joy. Thank you, she said simply. Your species has given mine a precious gift, a new way to experience the universe. Ta, still smiling from the tickling, shook his head. We should be thanking you. Your courage made this possible. Ambassador Hannah looked between them. Perhaps this is the true value of meeting other intelligent species. Not just sharing technology or resources, but sharing different ways of being alive. As the celebration continued around them, Lena stood with her human friends, her forearms relaxed in a way they had never been before. She had come to Earth expecting to study humans as an advanced species might study a simpler one. Instead, she had discovered that evolution takes many paths, each with its own wisdom and gifts. And somewhere in the space between tickling and laughter, between control and surrender, between human and Niveri, a new understanding had been born.